How's it going? Let's do a video here. I'm at the Northwest Astrological Conference. I'm a little cloudy. It's Sunday, and I thought I'd do a video here in the bookstore, which is pretty much the best astrology bookstore you'll find at a conference. And so I thought I'd give you a quick tour. Greg Nalbany, who puts this whole thing together, also put together the bookstore in Chicago last year for the United Astrology Conference. It was triple the size of this. So anyway, let's just go. Some of these books have sold out already, but let's just jump right to it. We had right here, we had Demetri George's new book that came out. We sold out. Two amazing books besides that book here in Chris Brennan's book. You don't have it already and you're studying on a traditional sense and on some history. This is great. Amazing book. Demetri's book is a if you don't know her teaching style, is in a workbook application, so you're taught things, and then there's like exercises for you to fill out with your own chart and stuff with the techniques that you've learned. It's an amazing book. The book number 2 comes out at the end of this year. Also, we have this right here, which is the workshop that we're going to have in September in Bend, Oregon, where she's basically teaching this book 5 straight days. I'll put a link in the comments. Let's jump into a place here in the bookstore. So if you don't have one of these already, this is an ephemeris. I'm going to be a little brutal here and say that you need to own one of these. It's a must-have on your bookshelf if you're doing astrology, studying astrology. I know some of you use ephemeris on your app or your program, which is great, but there is a different type of interaction that happens with a book when you're doing research and looking at tables and looking at past or future transits. There should be no question you should own one of these. There's a couple different versions of this. This is 1900 to 2000, and there's a version that goes from 1950 to 2050. It's called a midnight version. It's got a purple cover, and then there's a noon version which has a white cover, and I totally recommend both of those. This book is a weird one. I've talked about it in the group before. It's called Tables of Planetary Phenomenon. It's the last book that Neil Mickelson did. It has crazy tables like eclipse tables, outer body conjunctions, sunspot research. I mean, there was Jupiter ingresses. Solar and lunar eclipses in zodiacal order, whatever, man. If you're doing some heavy research, and you like paging through an ephemeris, that's not just online. This book, right there. I'll give you a view. Let me see what else I could show you. There's so much here. Claire Martin's books. These are published by the Wessex Astrologer, and you can find tons of books on that publishing company. And I love Claire's books. There's several ones. Here's, I think, volume 2. Planetary Aspects and Houses of the Horoscope. Here is volume 3, The Astrology of Time. Good books. And Anne Massey is no longer with us. Canadian astrologer, wrote a Venus book. This book is very digestible. It actually starts off with how the glyph is, why the glyph is even the glyph that it is, talking about Venus cycle and the transit in the sky and what it does with 8-year cycles and over long term, dealing with sacred geometry. 7 months evening star, 2-month conjunction with the sun, and then how Venus rises for 7 months as a morning star, and the cycle goes over and over again, and how it applies in history, and with people's charts. But the first half of this book is a really good explanation of like the glyph and where it comes from and the pattern that Venus makes in the sky. It's incredible. You can even go on YouTube and look at videos that over time you see these patterns that Venus makes along with the retrogrades that create a mandala in the sky or on paper or whatever, however you want to calculate it, and you'll see the magic of Venus. There's some good stuff on here on Venus retrogrades too. This book goes out for anybody you watching in other parts of the world, especially some of you in Turkey who know this book and who recommended this book. I'm not going to say anything about this, actually. I'm going to be a little mysterious about this book. Look it up. The Introduction to the Science of the Judgment of the Stars. Look up this book. Trust me, put it on your book list. I'll throw this one in there. Throw this James Holden book on here. As a matter of fact, I think we're out of the other ones. There's a one called The History of Horoscopic Astrology, which is basically a history of astrology and of astrologers, and what they've introduced in the history of astrology. There's a bigger encyclopedia that he actually did of astrologers. It's actual encyclopedia, it's like a huge dictionary, and it'll have the authors, have an astrologer's name, when they were born, when they died, and what how they influenced astrology over time. It's an expensive book. AFA has the book. Harder to find, but this one, dope. If you don't know who Karen Hammer-Gerzondag is, she's a Dutch astrologer. She's, I think she's a therapist, but she's put out a ton of books over her time. This House Connection book, there's one called the 12th House. She put out a series of beginners books. It's called Elements and Crosses. If you are, check out the astrologyuniversity.com site. We just added 3 lectures of hers. With an amazing slideshow. We're also doing a live webinar with her in a few months. I totally recommend her books. Some of them are starting to get harder to find. There's rumors that she's writing a book on the 8th house. That's probably going to be, would be nice if it was translated. But if you're in on the modern psychological tip, she's one of the best. And she's a great speaker if you ever get a chance to hear her. And you can, if you go to the astrologyuniversity.com website. What else do I'll show you here. Let's see. Oh, okay. Just so you can see this in person, because I know I did a review about a month ago about Robert's books. He put out a series of 5 books. This is the 5th one. It's called Holographic Transits. You're dealing with the prenatal cycles, synodic cycles, conjunctions before you were born, and then following them with your chart and with client's chart. So you're dealing with like Sun, Venus, prenatal Sun, Venus, Sun, Mercury, Sun, Mars, so on and so forth. It's really detailed. It also will tell you if like you have a program like Solar Fire, actually tell you how to calculate this stuff, or even because that's the program he was using. He's also deep spiritual Scorpio person, and this is one of my favorites. He's got the first book he did was on progressions, and this one though. This one's deep. This takes years to mess with, but nothing like it. By the way, here was the first one I'm talking about on progressions. He did another one, a relationship one. They're getting harder to find, by the way. You know, she wrote a good book, Royce Lyman, on prenatal eclipses. I'm going to go fast here. So this is a great book, really simple, straightforward. We're going to stick to Venus. We're going to go back to Venus. Adam Gainsbourg does a lot of his work and deals with conferences that are visual. You know, you'll like go to a conference with Adam and you'll sit and look at night in the sky and you'll track Venus. And I mentioned Ann's book earlier. This is a lot more detailed. He detailed each like conjunction that Venus makes with the moon during the 7-month evening, and then at the other side the 7 months of morning star. You know, and this will help you look at your chart to determine if you have a morning star Venus, evening star Venus, and the differences in how Venus works in those cycles. So much here. Pisces, Gemini rising, so you know the info is going to come your way. What else do I show you here? I'm lacking a little sleep. There's so much here. Okay. There's a bunch of books. There's a book by Jeffrey Cornelius called The Moment of Astrology, talking about how he makes the case that astrology is divination. Don't know the deal. This is another kind of book that's an essay just talking about a philosophical trip about astrology. It's called Cosmic Loom. This is by Dennis Ewell, if I'm saying this. This is a must if you're going deep into astrology. You want to have like a broad sense of what astrology is and our history and so on and so forth. Get this. I'm not giving these books justice, but we're doing this fast. Okay, I'll talk about this one. You know, I think Jim Lewis is known for astrolocality book, but I also want to mention David here because David has his own book that he did, and he also, along with him and his wife Faye, run Cosmic Patterns, which is the software for Kepler, Sirius, and a couple other pieces of software, Pegasus, that also win stars under their website. He's done deep research. He calls it vibrational astrology. They had their first conference earlier this year in Florida, and they're going to do it again. He's got amazing YouTube videos about what he does. Please look up David. He's a powerhouse. He's a legend, computer programmer. He's done so much for the astrology world, along with some other people. But this kind of book, you don't find his book. It's here in the bookstore, but you might have to hit him up straight on the website. Okay, so let's just try to get everything in the picture here. There's Frank. We know Frank. He does webinars for us for astrology.com. He's speaking right now during the lectures. This is one of my favorite books that he's done. It's called The Midheaven. It's like a thin pamphlet, it seems, but it feels good. It's a good price. I love this book. This is his main book to learn from, like beginner astrologer or intermediate. It's called Getting to the Heart of Your Chart. Awesome. Not on this table is a book that he put out last year on music horoscopes. So it's him and I got to remember to look at this camera. It's him and many other astrologers who picked a musician or a band and used charts to delineate their history. It's such a cool book. Find it. I can't remember the exact name. It's music horoscopes. But look, and this guy's prolific. Okay, come on. Look, there's all these books. Here's a Love, Sex, and Attraction. Here is someone
causing trouble.
That's for you, Frank, because we're talking about your books.
Oh, yay. Frank's books are great.
Yeah, they are. So,
if anyone wants to learn solar arcs, I always recommend Frank Clifford's Solar Arc Handbook. Mm-hmm. I'll get out of your video.
No, okay, but wait a second.
What else are we going to give recommendations
I do, but wait a second. I'm going to take a break here.
Okay.
Because now, speaking of books,
I have signed with my publisher. I was signed with a publisher for my first book on secondary progressions, and it'll be out for ESA September 2020.
Nice. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Finished. Yeah, and so and it's been coming.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
I think 10 or 12 years in the making. And anyway, things always happen at the right time with the right people.
That's right.
And Aaron, who published Demetra's and Chris's books, he's going to be the publisher for my book too. So
Aaron Cheek?
Aaron Cheek, yeah.
Aaron Cheek, Robito? Is it Robito?
Robito, yeah.
Press?
He was absolutely worth waiting for. So
Yeah, no, that's
I'm
great. No, I'm glad you jumped in on the video and said that. No, I'm serious. It's good.
Thank you. That's
and then, you know, whether I'm at ESAR or even after NORWAC, see your book on a table is going to be awesome.
Fantastic.
And I'm making this video. I was going to put it on my YouTube.
Streaming right now?
No, I'm making this video, but it's going to go on my YouTube channel. But I'm putting it in the Astro U group.
Fantastic.
So that's why I'm trying to grab certain people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You've covered Mark already?
I'm going to get there, and then I see Lynn's over there. I'm about to jump to Lynn.
Man.
And I threw in a couple other ones, a couple Holden books, whatever.
Well, Astrology University does have some of the best teachers.
No, let's be real about this. And I'll be real with all you watching, because Tony has a booth here. He's speaking here later.
Yeah.
But, I really had to see the effect of what Astrology University's had by everyone who's come here, because the common denominator, the common word had to do with, great speakers. Felt like all the speakers, all the webinars we have are of quality.
High quality, experienced speakers that can pull together a really interesting, well-structured presentation. And that makes a difference, in addition to having fabulous content, of course.
Yeah, no. And I think it's important more than ever right now, because astrology is very popular. They find that. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks.
I'll leave you to the rest of your book tour.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
See you later.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get to someone else that's on our roster, and it's Lynn Bell. She wrote this book dealing with family and charts and relations. It's a really good book. There's another book she did, I think, on solar returns. I can't remember. It's called Cycle of Life. It's really hard to find it. But if you don't know Lynn, every lecture is great. You're always taken in by the quality of her chart delineations and how she's using myth and archetype and the way she can explain it to you with her visuals, and then applying it to example charts of celebrities, so on and so forth. But also, if you ever see her face to face and get a reading, do it. But I love Lynn. She's another amazing person that's on our faculty. Here's a weird book. It's called The Rulership Book by Rex Bills, and it has just keywords. Like, here's the sun, right? It says self-esteem, self-interest. It's just like that. Look I'll show you. Let's see if we can do this. So we have stuff like this. Here's by word. So here it says postage, and then it has a Venus and Mercury glyph, right? Porches, and it has a Libra glyph. That's what this book is all about. It's a good book to have on your shelf if you need help to like an example, or if there's a certain object, a certain subject that you want to know, like what planet does it relate to, what sign. This book, The Rulership Book by Rex Bills. Also, this one is a reference. I'm just going to throw this one. It's called Keywords of Astrology. All right. Let's get to what we talked about earlier. Here is Mark Jones's first book. We're dealing with the nodes, Pluto and the nodes. His intro first book, amazing. Coming from the evolutionary style and Mark's style, really, on Pluto and the nodes. But let me get to one of my top 10 books on my shelf, and it's this book. It's called The Soul Speaks. We know Mark is a counselor, therapist, psychotherapist. I don't know if I'm doing that justice, the formality of it all, besides other things, besides being an astrologer. But this book is like counseling techniques for astrologers. And let's be straight up here. You're sitting with a friend, family, sister, a stranger. You're taking clients. You want to take clients. And this is my personal opinion here. There are things that happen between you and a client when we're talking about their chart. They're 99% of the time, they're coming to you because they're in a space and they're wanting answers about something. They're in times crisis. They're wanting clarity. There's challenges, so on and so forth. And a lot of times what happens this human nature, by you're relating with somebody, and let's say you're in a position where they're coming to you for help and insight. There are many things that happen in those types of conversations, and the tools that are needed to help a client and to help process with the client, and also on a basic level dealing with boundaries. And you can study your chart, you can you're studying, and the client comes in, you got all this stuff to talk about, right? And then you're like 45 minutes into an hour and 50-minute session, you only talked about one thing, and that's okay, because that's what the client is there for, and that's where you're going. And the counseling techniques in this book, and understanding about what the types of things that happen with that type of interaction, engaging it, is put in such a digestible form here. If you're not a counselor, you're not trained on that, but there's some tools here. This book was so needed, I think, in the astrology world. Even if you don't consider yourself an evolutionary astrologer or whatever type of astrology that you're into, this book changed my life as an astrologer. And to this day, I recognize with clients when I'm in certain situations and they're heavy or emotional and certain things, I go back to this. I go back to a couple of things in this book. This is a must-have. I know he's working on some other stuff. I know you've seen his lectures on our website. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, look at the title, man. The therapeutic potential of astrology. Come on. Buy the book. Anyway, I'm going to throw this book. I'm going to get into something here. All right, so this isn't exactly on a roster, but Demetra George is in this book. It's called The Celestial Art. It's put out by Three Hands Press. It was done by Daniel Schulke and Austin Copic. Helped put this book together, and there's many different authors in this book who write essays about astrological magic. Eric Perdue's in this book. Demetra George, Austin Copic has an essay. Lee Lehman has an essay. Benjamin Dykes does. John Michael Greer, Freedom Cole, and then Freedom Cole's got two great books called Circle of Life, Vedic books, by the way. I don't have those here right now. Jason Miller, Eric Perdue, Al Cummins, Aaron Cheek, Daniel Schulke. There's one essay on dark matter. Whatever the case is, if right now this is in play in the astrological world, in the magic world, people are open to doing things like this. This is a great intro to certain types of concepts and philosophical thinking behind techniques with astrological magic. I would get this book as soon as possible because I could see it going out of print. Okay. So much. Backlit. Okay, so Nadia, huge YouTube following, way ahead of all the YouTubers. Let's be honest about Nadia. Engaging, present, deep, real. She co-hosted one of our webinars for Astrology University. You've seen her. Go to her YouTube channel. She puts out her weeklies and her monthlies on there. She's dialed in. Great community of people who comment. This is her book, and she's here this weekend. We got to give her some props. Getting quick now. Fertility Astrology. Nicola Smuts Alsop, if I said that correctly. This is the definitive book. You want to talk about how to figure out, like, you want to get pregnant, you want to help a client, do that kind of thing. My explanation doesn't do this justice, but this is definitive book. I'm going to say right now. This came out last year. Buy it. If you using traditional techniques, medieval techniques, she's the expert on this. And not just in the book. She practices. You can go to her website. You can see what she does. And she's got the information to back it up and the technique. Okay, so Darby Costello is in our Astrology University roster. These are books that were reprinted by Raven Press, a.k.a. Tony Howard. I'm going to show you these really quick. This is book one, The Astrological Elements. right here. Look at that beautiful cover. That's Tony right there. And then here's book 2. It's called Earth and Air. You might have some of these books in yourself, but they can't find them anymore. They were reprinted, and people have been buying them. Our stack is getting low. Quick, Georgia Stathis. You want to deal with like someone who does heavy research, also a little bit of financial astrology, and just tracks cycles. She had a pre-conference workshop here. They had to do with like the history of fashion. A veteran in the astrology world. There's George's book. Great chart examples. Okay, there's that. I'm forgetting stuff. There's just too much. What else have we got? Let's see. There's some old school Liz Green, Horace Asparatus books. You might see them around. They're just great to have in your library. Here's our old school Saturn book, which has been reprinted. My brain is stuck. Here's our very famous book, pretty much on Pluto, called The Astrology of Fate. Speaking of, and I don't know if I still have the book here. There's a book, and it's gone off the table. It's called by Judy Hall. It's called, damn, I forgot. I'll remember in a second. What else can I show you? There's a Lee Lehman book that she wrote called Astrology Sustainability. Here's Kelly Hunter's book on Lilith. She's like, Kelly Hunter's one of the predominant experts on using Lilith in the chart. Tom Jacobs, I think, is another one, has a book. I think I got that name correct.
I think Nikki's simulcasting, you guys.
And what else can I show you? Henry Seltzer wrote a book on Eris. Here, he also is the producer of Time Passages software for the Macintosh and iOS. What else can I do here? Actually, OPA, the Organization for Professional Astrology, has a cool book about building an astrology practice called The Professional Astrologer. Yeah, maybe I'll just stop there. There's so much more on the tables. I'm trying to remember who else is on the roster so I don't forget. Obviously, Stephen Forrest, he's got a lot of books. George's books I've sold out of. Amazing. Here's Stephen's new book. It's called The Book of Fire. Just a shout out to Stephen. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh man, this mic was way far away from me. I'm sorry if the sound wasn't the best, but I just wanted to give you a quick review, quick thing about a bookstore and how amazing it is to go to a conference and to be surrounded by tables of books. It doesn't happen anywhere else. Obviously we do everything online. We're looking. Sometimes you want to touch it. You got to look at it. You ever get a chance to go to an astrology conference, and especially astrology